Hello everyone, welcome to English Meow. Today, I'm going to share Sophia's journey of learning English with you. Let's explore the methods she used to learn while listening to her slow-paced English reading.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sophia, and I want to share the story of how I learned to listen and communicate in English. Looking back, the process was not quick or simple. It stretched across many years, filled with both discouraging failures and surprising breakthroughs. Today, I can join international video calls, watch movies without subtitles, and chat casually with friends from different parts of the world. But when I first began, English listening felt almost impossible, as though everyone around me was speaking at double speed in a secret code that I could not unlock. I grew up in a coastal city where English was taught in schools but rarely used outside the classroom. Our teachers drilled us in grammar and writing, we memorized long vocabulary lists, and filled exercise books with practice sentences. On exams, I could score well by reproducing grammatical structures, but in real conversations, I was lost. English speakers on the radio or television seemed to blend words together so quickly that even sentences I knew on paper sounded foreign in my ears. For years, I carried the quiet belief that perhaps I was simply not talented at languages. The turning point came during university. I studied international relations, which required me to read policy papers and research articles in English. Reading was manageable, though slow. But when I attended a guest lecture delivered by an ambassador, I realized the true gap. He spoke clearly, but I understood almost nothing. I glanced around and saw my classmates nodding, some even taking notes. I felt embarrassed and discouraged. That night, I decided I could not continue in my field if I did not improve my listening skills. At first, I tried the usual approach, listening to recordings from textbooks. They were useful, but I soon noticed that the recordings were too clean, slow, deliberate, with exaggerated pronunciation. Real English was messy, full of contractions, background noise, and overlapping voices. The difference was like practicing in a swimming pool and then being thrown into the ocean. I needed exposure to authentic materials, not just simplified ones. Movies became my first real teachers. I chose romantic comedies and dramas, thinking the everyday conversations would be easier. I watched the same film scene repeatedly, first with subtitles, then without. Sometimes I paused to mimic a line, repeating it aloud until my tongue moved more smoothly. I remember struggling with a simple phrase, "What are you up to?" For weeks, I could not catch it in conversation because the words blended together. Only after hearing it dozens of times did my ear finally recognize it. That small victory gave me a sense of progress. Around this time, I also discovered the world of podcasts. I started with VOA Learning English, where hosts spoke slowly. But after a few months, I shifted to real interview-style podcasts. They were challenging, but I loved listening while commuting on the bus or cooking dinner. Some episodes felt like puzzles. I could piece together the main idea, but missed many details. To help myself, I transcribed short sections, writing down every word I heard, then checking against the transcript. It was painstaking work, yet it trained my brain to hear not just isolated words, but the rhythm of entire sentences. A technique that transformed my listening was shadowing. I played a recording through my headphones and tried to speak at the same time as the speaker, matching rhythm and intonation. At first, it felt ridiculous. I stumbled constantly, and my mouth could not keep up. But after weeks of practice, I noticed two things. First, my pronunciation improved. Second, my comprehension increased because my brain learned to anticipate common sound patterns. Instead of hearing a blur, I began predicting what word might come next. I also built a habit of keeping a small listening diary. Every day, I wrote down new expressions I heard, phrases I misunderstood, or idioms that confused me. For example, once I misheard kind of as candle. Later, when I wrote about it in my diary and listened again, I laughed at my mistake. Over time, the diary became a record of growth. On days when I felt discouraged, I could flip back and see how many obstacles I had already overcome. But progress was not smooth. There were many moments of frustration. I remember sitting in a cafe abroad, trying to order coffee. The barista asked for here or to go. I froze. I had learned the grammar of questions, but I could not connect the fast-spoken phrase to the meaning. Embarrassed, I nodded uncertainly until she repeated herself more slowly. That small failure stayed with me, and I practiced listening to similar everyday phrases afterward. Mistakes like these were painful, yet they became the fuel for targeted practice. Travel gave me some of the most powerful lessons. During a summer program in Canada, I stayed with a host family. Every breakfast conversation felt like a marathon. They spoke quickly about sports, local events, and television shows. At first, I understood only scattered words. But gradually, by listening daily, I started to piece together meanings. I asked them to repeat phrases and sometimes mimicked their expressions. The family was patient, often laughing with me at funny mistakes. That immersion experience accelerated my progress more than months of classroom study ever had. Back at university, I designed a structured routine. Each morning, I spent 15 minutes on focused listening practice, transcribing a news clip, or shadowing a podcast segment. At lunch, I joined an online study group where we discussed short videos together. In the evening, I watched a TV series without subtitles, allowing myself to relax and simply follow the story. Consistency was key. Even when assignments piled up, I protected these listening rituals. The habit built momentum, and I started noticing real improvements in how easily I processed speech. Music became another unexpected ally. I printed lyrics of my favorite songs and listened, line by line, repeating until I could sing along. At first, I relied on slow ballads, but later, I challenged myself with rap songs that used rapid speech and slang. Singing not only trained my ear, but also improved my memory for expressions. Even now, years later, I recall phrases I first encountered in songs. One of the hardest challenges was dealing with different accents. British English, American English, Australian English all sounded distinct and sometimes confusing. I deliberately exposed myself to variety, watching BBC documentaries, listening to American podcasts, and chatting online with exchange partners from India and Nigeria. At first, each new accent felt overwhelming, but slowly I built tolerance. I realized comprehension is less about catching every word and more about recognizing patterns and adjusting expectations. Confidence did not come from perfection. It came from small, repeated successes. I celebrated when I followed an entire 5-minute conversation without asking for repetition, or when I understood a joke in English for the first time. I rewarded myself with small treats, like ice cream after finishing a challenging podcast. These celebrations turned the learning process into something joyful, not just a duty. At work, the improvements became visible. During international conferences, I began taking notes and contributing to discussions instead of sitting silently. I volunteered to summarize meetings, forcing myself to listen carefully and then explain ideas in my own words. My colleagues noticed and encouraged me. Their support boosted my confidence, proving that my years of effort were finally paying off. Over time, I also started helping others. I mentored younger students in listening strategies, using transcripts, shadowing, and journaling. Explaining these methods to them reinforced my own understanding. Teaching, I realized, is one of the best ways to consolidate knowledge. Looking back, I see that learning to listen in English was not only about language. It was also about patience, resilience, and humility. Some days, I felt like giving up, convinced that I would never catch up with native speakers. But persistence turned into progress. I learned to treat mistakes not as failures, but as information about what I needed to practice next. I trained myself to celebrate effort as much as achievement. Today, I can enjoy English not just as a tool, but as a doorway to culture, friendship, and opportunity. I watch movies without subtitles, follow international news, and chat casually with colleagues abroad. These abilities seemed unreachable when I first began. The journey taught me that listening is not passive. It is an active skill that grows with deliberate attention. If I could speak to my younger self, I would say, be patient, stay consistent, and trust the process. English listening will always have challenges. New slang, new accents, new contexts, but with steady practice, what once felt impossible becomes natural. Like planting seeds in a garden, you water them daily even when you see no flowers. One day, without realizing it, you look around and the garden is blooming. That is exactly how English listening skills grow. Slowly, quietly, and beautifully, until one day you find yourself living in the language instead of struggling against it.
All right. After listening to her story, do you have any thoughts or new plans? But no matter what, never stop learning, because before you even realize it, you'll keep making progress. Thank you for listening today, and see you in the next episode.